Aircraft designers always design an airplane around a central concept of functionality. However, sometimes they just want to prove their machine can fly. From UFO-like saucers to inflatable aircraft, designers have tried it all. Here are 10 strange aircrafts that actually existed. The Goodyear inflataplane. To start off the list of strange aircrafts that actually existed, let me just say that building an inflatable airplane to rescue stranded pilots from the battlefield does not sound like a bright idea. However, that's exactly what Goodyear tried to do when they marketed their new inflataplane to the US Army back in 1956. Naturally, the Army was impressed by this bizarre idea and asked Goodyear to develop some prototypes for testing. The initial prototype, the GA-33, was built and flown in less than 12 days. The pressure necessary to keep the airframe rigid was supplied by an air compressor, which was driven by the same 40 HP engine that propelled the airplane. The Steepa Caproni. This plane, also known as the Flying Barrel. This unique airplane was the brainchild of Italian aviation engineer Luigi Steepa and still is counted among the strange aircrafts that actually existed. After deeply studying the principles of fluid dynamics, he believed that if the engine and propeller were to be enclosed in a tapered tube-like structure, the overall thrust output would be increased. He called his design the in-tube propeller. To test his theory, he approached renowned Italian airplane maker Caproni in 1932, and began working on the prototype. The Blohm & Voss BV-141. Back in 1937, the Nazi Air Force was in need of a single-engine reconnaissance aircraft. Two planes were favorites for the task. One was the Focke-Wulf 189 Uhu. And the other was the Blohm & Voss BV-141, Link 5, asymmetrical tactical reconnaissance aircraft. Later these came to be known as one of the strange aircrafts that actually existed. The Focke-Wulf was a conventional twin-boom, twin-engine design and was officially declared the winner. However, the BV-141 design was so promising that the ministry secretly decided to continue research on the aircraft. Unlike any other aircraft of its time, the BV-141 used an asymmetrical approach. The airplane was divided into two separate sections, joined together by the wing. The main section housed the BMW power plant, while the crew cabin was located away from the body, on the wing. The Hughes H-4 Hercules. In 1942, the American government was in need of a large cargo airplane which could fly troops and supplies over the Atlantic, into Europe. It was World War II, Nazi ships and submarines were constantly attacking American supply ships trying to reach Europe. Aviation tycoon and billionaire Howard Hughes responded with a proposal nobody thought was humanly possible at that time: the H-4 Hercules. If completed, it would be the largest aircraft ever built as well as the largest flying boat ever. What makes it even more interesting is that when Hughes signed the contract with the Army, he was forbidden from using metals in the construction of his giant airplane, as it was wartime and metals were in short supply. So Hughes decided to make a giant wooden airplane which will later be counted as one of the strange aircrafts that actually existed. Vought V-173/XF5U1. This is definitely one of the most bizarre aircraft designs that easily fit among the strange aircrafts that actually existed, but apparently the weird design was not without purpose. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Navy wanted an aircraft which could take off and land in restricted areas, such as the deck of an aircraft carrier. This new aircraft was expected to combat the Japanese fighter airplanes and submarines. Vought was a company famous for producing great aircraft such as the iconic F-4U Corsair fighter airplane. In 1942, they started working on the flying flapjack design, a shape that had no discrete nose, tail, or wing section. Instead, the whole body resembled a pancake-like shape, with two propellers sticking out at the tip of each side. The first prototype was called the V-173. It really impressed during the test runs, displaying the ability to take off and land at extremely low speeds. This was due to the fact that unlike most conventional aircraft, the entire body of the V-173 generated lift. The Barton I Bereave VVA-14. The Barton I VVA-14 was an experimental prototype seaplane developed in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The designer of this bizarre aircraft was Italian-born aviation engineer Robert Barton I. When the Soviet Union began to fear that the US would launch a nuclear assault on them from under the water with their submarines, they turned to the Bereave Aircraft Company, which was well known for making seaplanes. They decided to build a submarine hunting amphibious aircraft that could take off from both land and water, could glide at high speeds on the surface of the ocean, as well as possess vertical takeoff and landing abilities. If successfully developed, the VVA-14 would have proved to be a considerable threat to any Western naval force trying to invade Soviet waters. The Konstantin Kalinin K-7. One look at this aircraft and you can definitely tell where it came from: Russia. Or in this case the Soviet Union, since this plane was built during the 1930s. Its purpose was to serve as a bomber/cargo aircraft. The K-7 was the largest propeller-driven airplane of its time, with a wingspan greater than that of a B-52. Therefore it has landed straight to this list of strange aircrafts that actually existed. It was created by former World War I aviator Konstantin Kalinin. The design of the aircraft was rather unorthodox, with a small central fuselage and giant, thick wings. The landing gear was integrated into the two pontoon-like structures beneath the wings. Power was provided by a total of 7 V-12 engines, 6 in pull and 1 in push configuration. The plane was capable of carrying a crew of 19 along with 16 tons of bombs and 120 paratroopers in the giant wings. The weird structures below the wings held the landing gear, along with 8 7.62 mm machine guns and 8 20 mm cannons. The Avro VZ-9 Avrocar. The VZ-9 was the result of the experiment carried out by Avro Canada and the US military to create a flying saucer, so you can easily understand why it ended up in our list of strange aircrafts that actually existed. Clearly someone in the Pentagon had been watching too many alien movies. The military hoped the saucer would have stealth characteristics, be able to fly as high as 100,000 feet, and have a top speed exceeding Mach 2. The proof-of-concept vehicle created by Avro was nowhere close to achieving these impressive goals set by the US military. Instead, it could barely go higher than 3 or 4 feet before losing control, and the maximum speed was just 35 miles per hour. On top of that, piloting the aircraft was a huge pain because the centralized rotor would lift all the water from any puddles in the ground and shove it into the pilot's face. So it was really difficult to fly without a protective windshield. The XF-85 Goblin. Long-range bomber aircraft were extremely crucial to the air force of any country, and World War II proved that fact. Although bombers were good at carrying large payloads over long distances, they could not deal with enemy fighter aircraft. And escort fighters could not keep up with the ever-increasing range of bombers. So countries like USA and the Soviet Union began to test the concept of parasite fighters. The idea was to carry these small fighters inside the large bombers. While flying through hostile territory, the fighters could be detached from the bomber, fight off enemy airplanes, and then redock with the mothership. However, any experiment to build a successful parasite fighter failed. The McDonnell X-85 was an attempt in the 1950s by the US military to build a parasite fighter that could be docked inside a B-36 to defend it in missions over Soviet targets. The Lune-class Ekranoplane. Lune-class Ekranoplane tops the list of strange aircrafts that actually existed. If there is one word to describe Soviet engineering, it is huge. This particular mammoth aircraft, known as the Lune-class MD-160, is a cross between an airplane and a ship. It flies only 16 feet above the water and can hit speeds in excess of 350 miles per hour. While the MD-160 may handle like a drunken man on roller skates, It comes loaded with some serious firepower just in case some American ship tries to mess with it. The top section of the fuselage is fitted with 6 Sunburn SSN-22 anti-ship missile launchers. If any small threats such as boats or low-flying airplanes appeared, the Lun was equipped with 23mm cannons and .50 caliber machine guns.
Wherever I go, wherever I see, I remember you. If you remember